Welcome everyone. This is Mary Vandenplas in Operations and Research here at Burtch Works. Today, Linda Burtch, our Managing Director, will be sharing her insights on where the data science and analytics hiring market is headed in 2018. A few quick logistics items before we dive in. Only the presenters will be speaking, so your phones and microphones are muted. There will be a short Q&A at the end of the webinar, so I'll be collecting your questions via the chat function on the left side of your screen, where you can submit your questions for Linda. If you experience any technical issues, please submit those through the chat box as well. Finally, today's session is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel shortly after completion. So if you missed part of it or would like to share it with a colleague, you're welcome to do that. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Linda Burtch. Linda has over 30 years experience in quantitative recruiting, which gives her a unique insight into the evolution of the market and has made her a leader in analytics and data science recruiting. Linda is also an active member of the American Statistical Association and Informs, and often shares her insights on analytics and data science careers at luncheons, conferences, corporate meetings, and webinars. Linda, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, Mary, and thanks to all of you who are on the line and joining me today. There's over 300 people, I think, that are registered, so thanks for the great turnout. Those of you who are familiar with Burtch Works may already know this, but every year I like to put together a list of predictions kind of based on what we're seeing in the data science and analytics market. So I guess it's not exactly predictions so much as what I'm observing as new trends that I think are going to end up growing in 2018. So it's been 5 years since data scientist was declared the sexiest job of the 21st century. And with all the attention that the field's been getting, things have started to evolve at a very rapid pace. I'm only going to be talking for about 20 minutes or so today, so be sure to line up your questions and comments. For me, that part of the webinar is the most interesting. First, let's start off with an easy one. The data scientist title will likely remain the title of choice for both employers and professionals looking to draw attention to either their job postings or their LinkedIn profiles. Now this is partly because it's a hot title du jour, but also because there are so many conflicting definitions of what exactly a data scientist is. In many ways, you could call data scientist a catch-all term for all analytics jobs. We at Burtch Works differentiate a data scientist from a predictive analytics professional, which is also different than a business intelligence professional, and that is different than a business analyst. Now I don't want to spend a lot of time here going through a lot of detail on how these all differ, but it's certainly important to go beyond job titles and figure out exactly what a job is or what a potential candidate might really be doing. I've had more than a handful of clients also admit to me that the job that they're looking to fill isn't exactly a data scientist in kind of the strictest sense, but they feel that they need to use that title in order to get applicants to apply. Now that's crazy, and this is pretty much true in all industries. In technology, where the jobs might be more of an engineering job than a true data scientist job, or maybe in retail or consumer packaged goods, where the job might be more forecasting or market mix analytics, just to give you a couple examples there. And certainly the academic programs are all jumping in using data science in any and every new quantitative program that they're offering. This is going to continue to get worse before it gets better, I'm afraid. So this means it's really important for everyone to be on the same page if you're considering a job change or if you're hiring for your analytics department. Also, if you're considering investing in a boot camp or an advanced degree program, make sure that you understand exactly what you're going to be taking away from that program. So ask a lot of questions and figure out which of the definitions of data scientist you're talking about. A prediction that I'm sure many business majors will be happy to hear, As the analytics and data science professions mature, sophisticated techniques are becoming much more accessible to the less technically savvy. New tools are being developed that are pretty straightforward to apply and can be used by the most casual analytics user, somebody who maybe has experience with parts of the process but may not be as rigorously trained as a statistician perhaps, or somebody who studied mathematics or theoretical physics. Open source tools are continuing to become more robust. One example is that Python is starting to dominate as the tool of choice among quantitative professionals, and now early career professionals are applying it almost like people used to use Excel. And that's probably a little bit of an exaggeration, but let's give it a couple more years and let's see what happens. So, and I'm really excited to see what our next SAS versus R versus Python flash survey shows this summer. It comes out in June. Machine learning is another great example. It once was only understood by computer scientists and maybe some operations research people, but now machine learning algorithms are nearly ubiquitous. This is another hot term where the applications will vary from team to team and person to person. So again, it's really important to dig deeper into exactly what is meant in any discussion of machine learning. Interestingly enough, there was a piece in the New York Times business section just this morning on Google selling artificial intelligence technology that they have labeled as a kind of automated machine learning. Fei-Fei Li, who's a chief scientist at Google, used the example that if a zoologist wants an algorithm that identifies jaguars and giraffes, all you have to do is upload images of jaguars and giraffes, and you're done. So in addition to tools becoming more accessible, technology concepts are becoming much more accessible. So today your grandparents might not be able to get into a detailed discussion with you about deep learning or neural nets, but I'd be pretty surprised if they don't have a good idea at this point of what artificial intelligence is. The buzz about AI has become really widespread. It's pretty hard to avoid advertising for Watson or GE's embrace of everything AI. It's on billboards, it's all over airports, it's even on the sides of buses at this point. So this year your grandparents might chat about artificial intelligence at a family gathering. So next year, so 2019, I'm predicting that they'll understand blockchain. And then give them 5 years and it's going to be quantum computing. Maybe sooner than that actually with quantum computing. Number 4. Companies will evaluate their analytics ROI. This is nothing new or surprising, right? I also chatted a bit about this last year. But now many of these expensive teams have been around for 2 or 3 years or so. So I predict that this is the year that many companies will say, show me the money. Most of you know this already, but just a reminder. It's important to make sure you differentiate what is interesting from what is important. Companies are in business to make money, so make sure that what you're doing is relevant to that goal. Number 5, Python is the new R, something that I've alluded to in an earlier slide. Now I'm not sure that the snake in this picture is actually a python, but I really like the picture and I'm sure you guys get the idea. So this open source tool has blown into town and it has nowhere to go but up. Many of you are aware of our really, really popular SAS-R Python survey. And here are the results for you to take a look at from last year. So you can see that Python is becoming much more popular and gaining momentum among all the predictive analytics professionals. More and more often I've heard that Python is now the tool of choice. Seems like that's mostly been driven by the increased development of open source tools and because its models can now be more seamlessly put into production. Also, as I understand it, Python can be more efficiently can more efficiently accommodate large quantities of data. So let's see what the survey says this summer. And on a related note, people or companies who are only using SAS as their statistical tool will be looking at a much smaller pool of options. From a company's perspective, potential candidates are now hesitating to take jobs where the only statistical tool that they'll be using is SAS. Now that's especially true at the early career for the young people going into analytics. From the quantitative professional's perspective, if you only know SAS and have been slow to migrate to either R or Python, you're going to be limiting your career options as most jobs now require these open source tools. Now don't get me wrong, SAS will continue to be a strong force in certain industries like the pharmaceutical industry or within banks. So it's really not going anywhere. But my advice is always to widen your skill set, and as a result you'll be safeguarding your career. It's also important to note that the field changes quickly. So Python may be in demand today, but it could be something entirely new tomorrow. Number 7, staying hands-on is more important than ever. Now I get a lot of pushback on this from my senior level people, but I'll tell you that even for a director, a senior director, or even VP jobs, corporations oftentimes are looking for leaders that can not only provide strategic vision and insights, but are also able to be player coaches to a young or maybe not so young staff. Now I suspect that many of you are not convinced on this point. So let me spend a minute and give you an illustration. I worked on a couple of senior level retainer searches this year where they were looking for new leadership to come in to develop more advanced analytics capabilities. Now in both cases, while the companies did not necessarily say that they required hands-on experience, after all, the salary ranges here were, base was about up to $300, and with bonus it was about $500,000. They ended up hiring candidates that were still hands-on, not necessarily on the job. Actually, one guy was doing Kegel competitions on the side, but because they were likely busy managing big teams, and these people were really doing it because they loved it and wanted to keep a hand on the tools because times are changing so fast. And I think that's just really a smart career strategy. So what is going on with this, you might ask? Well, a couple things here. A lot of senior jobs are with firms that are establishing analytics as a new capability within that firm. So if you're charged with hiring and developing a team from scratch, it's pretty likely that early on you're going to be up to your elbows with data. So actually I hear from so many of my people, even the very seasoned, that working with data and building the models is actually their first love. And they want to keep a project or two under their belt just to make sure they stay sharp. And again, smart idea. Also, we all know how fast technology is moving, and tools are certainly evolving quickly. So very, very important to make sure that you keep up with the technologies. And there's no better way to do that than to stay hands-on. Okay, so here's an interesting one. Number 8, China is the Wild West of analytics. China's quantitative prowess has been accelerating really fast, as I'm sure you all have a sense for. Not only are they investing in United States companies, but their homegrown firms are also growing rapidly. Companies like Baidu and Alibaba and Tencent, and there are many, many others, are collecting their own troves of huge amounts of data. And they are after the talent that have cut their teeth here in the United States and will bring a lot of institutional knowledge back to their firms. So I had a couple of actually 2 of my senior contacts call me during the month of December asking me my opinion on whether or not they should accept offers from firms in China. Also, since the year started, so we're only talking about the last 2 weeks here, I've started working on an analytics lead role in Peru, and also for a U.S.-based startup in New York doing a lot of work in Africa. This is really an exciting trend. So let me know if you might want to learn more about these options or this kind of option. So another thing that I have noticed is a growing trend of traditional companies creating quantitative startups in order for them to introduce new products or services. That way they can work quickly and pretty independently to bring an idea to market and drive perhaps a new stream of revenue for their business, or they might be doing it just to stave off an agile startup, or maybe a force like Amazon eyeing their business that might be looking to disrupt their entire industry. I'll give you a couple examples here. Allstate spun off a technology that they have been developing in-house over the last half a dozen years or so. Most of you are now familiar with the ability to price auto insurance through monitoring individual driving behavior. So as a separate entity, this spin-off, which they called Arity, is able to leverage this capability widely and not just for Allstate. Also, Grainger Industrial Supply, which is a company that's nearly 100 years old, introduced a new and completely separate startup division of their firm called Gamut. Their mission is to very quickly bring a new customer experience to their purchasing managers and to beat out any potential competition that's coming in from Amazon. So some of these spin-offs or startups have a better chance of attracting entry-level top talent in this highly competitive tech world. These young people might hesitate to join a more traditional legacy organization. Also, startups like this have the benefit of being backed by a large company while remaining quick and agile, and I see this as a great career option for people. So finally, number 10. The acquihire has gotten big in data science. So this is when a large organization is looking for a significant pool of technical talent, and they'll sometimes just buy a smaller firm. Not necessarily, sometimes for the product, but not necessarily so, but they want to get the talent that works in these smaller organizations. Now this technique has been pretty popular in Silicon Valley for a handful of years, with companies like Apple and Google buying up startups to bring their teams and capabilities on board. This was oftentimes used to get to their engineering teams. So now, with the continued limited availability of skilled data scientists, there have been companies starting to use this strategy to grab data scientist consultancies so they can quickly add to their teams. So I've got a couple examples for you here. There is a product design company called IDEO that recently bought Datascope, which is a data science consulting firm. American Family Insurance just last month bought a firm called Networked Insight to accelerate its artificial intelligence capability. And Apple has used this technique many times to quickly ramp up a capability, and they recently acquired an AI firm called Lattice Data. Okay, so I've given you a lot of predictions about what's going to happen, but I also want to include one thing that won't happen. Data scientists will not become obsolete through automation. There's a lot of talk about robots taking over many professions, and there's even talk of data scientists having that very same fate. Well, maybe we'll see some data janitorial types of tasks being automated, but I think it's going to be a long while before the demand for analytics professionals will even level off, let alone go down. So, and I'm sure that that doesn't surprise any of you out there, especially any hiring managers that are out there. So on that very positive note, let's go back to Mary for just a quick commercial about Burtch Works, and then we'll get on to questions. Mary?
Thanks, Linda. We're going to get to our Q&A in just a minute, so if you have a question for Linda, please be sure to send it over to me using the chat feature on the left side of your screen. So for those of you who aren't familiar with us, Burtch Works is an executive recruiting firm specializing in the placement of quantitative business professionals, typically within the fields of marketing research, analytics, and data science. We're the leading resource for this type of talent and insights about the hiring market. And we produce 3 comprehensive studies salary reports each year for our main specialty areas. These reports each contain over 30 pages of data and can be downloaded for free at birchworks.com/study. If you're looking to add to your predictive analytics staff, we'd be happy to speak with you and do some brainstorming about your hiring plans for this year. We offer contingency and retained services from entry-level analysts all the way up to Chief Analytics Officer and Chief Data Scientist searches. Feel free to send us an email if you want to chat. info@birchworks.com. And you can also post your quantitative opportunity or browse for a new opportunity for yourself on our niche job board, which is trafficked by thousands of professionals in analytics, data science, marketing research, and much more. Aside from searches we're engaged on, we've also opened up our job board to all of our clients. So if you're just looking for a new targeted place to post your ads, definitely get in touch with us. We offer several options depending on how many roles you'd like to post. You can also follow Burtch Works across social media channels. That way you can stay updated on all of our latest research. Speaking of latest news, if you're interested in more insights about the analytics and data science hiring market like the ones presented today, check out birchworks.com/blog, where we post periodic updates with hiring market insights and analysis, as well as flash survey results and interviews with our quantitative network. Up next in our webinar schedule is Tim Resmeyer, an executive leadership coach and longtime quantitative executive who is partnering with Burtch Works to provide career advice and insights to our network. Tim's professional career includes over 20 years of experience in quantitative executive roles at firms including Starcom, IRI, SPSS IBM, and Mintel, and he now provides coaching services to executives and companies around the globe. He put on a leadership and conference webinar for us last fall that you can watch on our YouTube channel, and his next presentation will be in early February, so keep an eye out for that. And now it's time everyone's been looking forward to, the Q&A. So let's jump in, and feel free to continue sending your questions in using the chat box on your screen. All right, Linda, one question that we got is about your prediction for SAS. So if you're a SAS-only person, what can you do to make sure that you have the skills needed if you're maybe in financial services and want to transition, or want to make sure that you're staying relevant in the market?
That's a great question. I think it's certainly important to keep your skills as fresh as possible, and that might mean that you'll need to invest in some personal learning on the side. There's plenty of MOOCs available out there now, as well as other sources. It's pretty easy to get your hands on information on these open source tools. So the other thing I'd recommend is that you really think about ways that you might be able to apply those tools that you've learned maybe on the outside to your current position. So maybe run something in SAS and then compare it to results using R, and be an advocate for new tools in your own organizations.
All right, and on to sort of the data science market. Do you think that data scientist positions are going to be open to entry-level graduates? And if so, what kind of skills or educational backgrounds are going to be the most important?
Yeah, certainly the data science job market is red hot. It's always a little bit difficult, though, to get yourself into your first job and get that real experience. So it's certainly important to leverage the alumni network from your university and also your personal network to find that first job. I think it's also really important during school that you get an internship that's relevant and targeted to your where you want to go. And then make sure that your hands-on skills are fresh and sharp. because that's what's going to be important as you go through the interviewing process.
Okay, and a question about business intelligence actually. As data science, which we can see is not going away, as that accelerates, is traditional business intelligence hiring in decline?
No. I think data and data-driven decision making is now more important than ever. Certainly there's many more ways to analyze quantitative problems than there's ever been, but ultimately you have to be able to distill that down so folks can understand that, and that includes data scientists having to do that, or handing it off to, let's say, a program manager or a business intelligence professional to put it in, let's say, a format that's going to be understandable to the non-technical audience. So I don't see BI going away at all.
All right. And how would you convince some of these legacy companies that you talked about to incorporate predictive analytics into their operation?
Yeah, I think that's something that needs to happen. Well, I shouldn't say exclusively, but who's ever at the top really needs to understand how quantitative decision making is so important to stay relevant and for competitive purposes. So that's usually where I see it coming from, and a lot of my senior level folks that are considering taking jobs at the more senior end will ask a lot of questions about who's backing it. And the answer needs to be that is coming from the top.
All right. I think we have time for about one more question. So what about international candidates? So candidates with visas, how are you seeing the market for those candidates, and what do you see for the future in that area?
Well, that's a hard one. I wish I had a crystal ball on that. But clearly, the immigration topic is a hot one. And I think that our technology, our need for staying competitive on a global landscape really requires us to support visa transfers. So I'm optimistic that'll happen.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone who submitted questions today. That's all the time we have. So if you'd like to discuss your hiring plans or see if we have roles that are a fit for your experience, send us an email at info@burtchworks.com to start the process. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great day.
Bye, everybody.